This is the Brazoria County Minute. And now the host of the Brazoria County Minute, Christen English.
Okay, hello. I am here today in the Be Remembered Studios in Lee Jackson, Texas, with Laurie Kincannon. She is the mayor of West Columbia, Texas. And I'm just here chatting with her today, talking about what's going on in West Columbia, what's been going on, and her history with the town. So, Laurie, can you tell us how you came to know about West Columbia, Texas?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. Most people say they were born and raised in West Columbia. I was adopted and raised in West Columbia.
Okay.
And so I feel very blessed. I've always felt that God had a hand in my being in West Columbia. I didn't know how much of a hand he had until about 18 months ago. My daughter took a DNA test, and she was contacted by a man who said that they had a very strong relationship and he wanted to pursue that. And she said, well, my mom's adopted. And he said, well, I know that my mom is not her mom, but my mom had two sisters. And so he led my daughter down this path, believing that my mother was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, which oddly enough, her grave was very close to my husband's family's graves. So anyway, we went down that road for about 2 weeks, and then finally my records were opened, and my daughter and I went to the courthouse, and she was reading through the microfilm, and she suddenly gasped, and I ran over there, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, Mom, his mom is your mom. So he was very taken aback. He was quite a wealthy man, and I'm sure he didn't want anybody interfering with that. And so he had us prove everything, which we did. Luckily, the records were well written by the caseworker, and I found out that I was born several months premature on the floor of an apartment in Houston.
Wow.
But I mean, my story could have ended right there.
Yeah.
But thank goodness my birth mother did go to the hospital, and my mother's gynecologist was actually the doctor on call. And so my birth mother said, I want to give this baby up for adoption. She never saw me again. And my adoptive parents were called, and the rest is history. So I felt very blessed to have grown up in West Columbia. My dad owned a grocery store on Main Street, so I grew up knowing everybody in town. I have that strong connection, and I feel that it's my duty to more or less give back to the community because of the blessings I've received there in West Columbia.
Okay, so is that kind of what led you to want to run for mayor?
Well, I'd always wanted to be in public service. I spent 35 years in the classroom. I wanted to continue some form of public service. Honestly, I wanted to be a state rep, but that opportunity just never came to me. And one day I was just standing on the street talking to a friend, and the mayor, who had been a mayor for a long time, walked by and told me that he was retiring. So I said, It wasn't perfect timing for me, but I went home and told my husband, I'm going to run for mayor. It's never been about the vote. I don't think in my 15 years of being the mayor, I've ever had the opportunity.
Years.
Yes.
I was going to ask you how long. That's a long time.
I've never had the opportunity to vote because it would only be if the vote was split. So it's not to me about having power. It's, to me, about being the public face of the community and going out and representing West Columbia wherever I can.
Right. So there's been, a lot of growth and change in the town since you have been mayor. Can you kind of tell me, how that kind of came about?
Sure.
Who have you partnered with?
Okay.
Who has supported you in that?
Okay.
I mean, because I know it takes a village to make things happen.
Right, it does. And I do not take credit for that. I always tell people it's the team, and it has been a team effort. The city manager, Debbie Sutherland, came on board about the same time I was first elected. But she had been with the city for a number of years as the city secretary. But the city council talked her into applying to be the city manager, and she's been really great. And so I came on board, and we sat down and we said we were facing all sorts of abandoned buildings just sitting there, nothing happening there. We drove around, we looked at potential and looked at what could happen. We decided on a little idea that West Columbia is open for business, and we began looking at leakage. Leakage is anything that your town doesn't currently offer that people are leaving town for. So we began looking at leakage reports and began trying to recruit those types of businesses. For example, we had no medical facilities at the time. We did have a chiropractor, but we did not have medical facilities. And so our EDC that had been somewhat dormant for quite some time, we brought them to life, and now we have 2 medical facilities operating in West Columbia that serve young children all the way up to older people. And so we targeted that and worked towards that goal. Another thing that we did that I'm very proud of personally, one time I'm also the economic development president, and at a meeting, a young lady who was thinking about opening a business came to the meeting, and she said, "Why should I open a business in West Columbia? What's different in West Columbia than in Brazoria, Sweeney, Angleton, whatever?" That really got me thinking, wow, what can we do that's different from another town? So another member of the EDC, Darlene Shoemaker, the city manager, and I sat down. We began looking at programs in other towns. So we now have an incentive grant program that's available for our older businesses as well as our newer businesses. And it's a 50-50 grant up to $5,000, so $10,000 investment total. And it's for signage, for facade, all sorts of things that make the building look more pleasant and better.
And that would be for current business owners or new businesses that come into town?
Yes, for the old businesses. We really started it out for the old businesses, but any business in town is eligible. The EDC started out setting aside $25,000 for this each year, and I'll be honest with you, it was hard getting started because some people didn't understand, they didn't realize the potential for this program, but now we exceed the $25,000, which I know it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it is to a small business.
Definitely.
And we have added to that over time. So over the course of years, we have really invested and changed small businesses in our town.
Yes, and I've seen the growth, so many small businesses opening up. And I mean, I personally enjoy, being able to go when I have some time and just hit some of the boutiques and shops and restaurants. And, it's nice to be able to just stay in, when you go somewhere, just stay there. I mean, I'm not from that town, but if I go there, I can hit several different places and spend the day.
Great.
And
that's what I love to hear.
Yes, and I'm sure that for the people who live there, they enjoy not, having to drive 15 to 20 minutes to do anything, to have something there.
Right.
But I think that a lot of times people who are from small towns, they get nervous about growth because they don't want to see things change to the point where they don't recognize their town anymore.
Right.
Now, I can't speak as a resident of West Columbia because I'm not one, but what I see when I'm there is even though there's growth, it still feels like a small town. And I like that because I too am a small town girl. I like I like being able to see people I know in the store and run into a familiar face everywhere I go, and makes you feel at home and safe. And so I do like the way that West Columbia still has that small town feel, but there's still growth, and you can see things are happening. You can see the excitement and the potential that's there.
Well, Christen, the good news there for those people that want to continue that small town is that we are pretty landlocked. If you look at West Columbia, we have a lot of federal, state, and county properties that surround us that are going to keep us from growing too much.
So nobody has to be too worried, right?
Well, right. But we have to worry about keeping our small businesses alive and thriving because, we knew going in that it can't be supported just by the residents of West Columbia. We have to bring people in from surrounding areas to keep them thriving. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Right. So that kind of leads to my next question I wanted to ask you. Where do you see the future going? Are you guys opening up to potential for tourism and things like that?
You asked just the right question. If you notice my T-shirt,
Yes,
Columbia
I do see that.
1836. So Texas history has always been my thing. I first started teaching at West Columbia Junior High. I was the Texas history teacher there. And so I've always been a strong advocate for our history. And for the last 30 years, I have been working to try to get more recognition for Columbia because there is not another town in Texas that has what Columbia has as far as history is concerned. But we have been largely ignored by the state and national potential. So that's changing right now. And
That's
I
awesome.
can't really tell you right now exactly what's going to happen, but I developed this grassroots movement called Columbia 1836. Some of the events that I want to see interpreted in Texas history, number one, we were the first capital of the Republic of Texas, which means the first Congress met there in Columbia. Sam Houston and Mary Bobby Lamar were inaugurated as the Republic's president and vice president in Columbia. Santa Anna was imprisoned in and around Columbia after the Battle of San Jacinto. And Stephen F. Austin sadly passed away in Columbia on December 27th, 1836. So in 2018, I approached the Texas Historical Commission to come into Columbia and take over some of our historical features, and I was turned down. But that's all changing now.
Oh, that's great
and
news.
with the help of our state representative, Cody Vasut, I cannot say enough good about what he has been able to help me do, but also citizens have written letters, have campaigned, and some big things are about to happen.
That's wonderful.
With tourism.
Such a rich history there.
Right. Well, the great thing about tourism is that tourists come in, they spend their money, and then they leave.
Right.
So we can maintain that same small town feel, but yet we can get our sales tax up. We can support our small businesses. We can bring bigger businesses. When I go to schools and talk to the kids, they all want a Chick-fil-A. They all want a Whataburger. And I tell them that we don't have the population to support that. But with tourism, we can support that.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to our community to develop this, and I think it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that without me having prior knowledge that that's the direction you were going. Just when I do visit West Columbia, I think, wow, I can see this having the potential that people would want to come and visit here. Just beyond that, there's so much there.
Right.
But then there's in the vicinity, there's still other places that people can visit.
Right.
They're close to the coast. There's rivers and there's so
Absolutely.
many parks. There's so much more there.
Right.
So they could spend several days and enjoy everything that not only West Columbia has to
Absolutely.
offer, but the surrounding areas.
Well, Columbia 1836 is not just about West Columbia. This has a huge potential for Brazoria County as a whole, just the things that you mentioned, but, Velasco and the Stephen F. Austin statue. So it's not just West Columbia. It'll impact our entire area.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
In
Yeah.
a positive fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to keep our small town feel, but still have growth and
Right.
opportunity
Right.
for the businesses
Right.
and the small businesses. Small businesses are
Right.
wonderful. I mean, they are the heart of our community, and there's just you can tell the difference when you visit. Chain places are great. We love to have them.
Right.
But there's just something about that small business when you're there. Yeah, the people who own it are invested, and they treat you like they're invested.
Absolutely. Right.
So.
Well, like I said, I grew up, my dad was a grocer on Main Street. And so I understand that small business mentality, and I want to support those small businesses. So, it was a struggle to get them, and I want to keep them and keep them prospering. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate you answering my questions and chatting with me today. And be sure and go visit West Columbia if you haven't been there lately. They have some great boutiques and restaurants.
We have more coming, too.
Yes, so very exciting. Thank you very much for being with me today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
The Brazoria County Minute is brought to you by BeRemembered.us. Tell your story. Be remembered.